From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London.
Hello, Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney.
And I'm Sunil Gupta for Akashvani in New Delhi.
On this week's Stumped, we're joined by the 21-year-old Australian who smashed the fastest 100 in one-day cricket. But first this week, we're going to talk about sporting rivalries and mental toughness. One of the biggest sporting rivalries on the planet takes centre stage when India and Pakistan meet in the men's 50-over World Cup. It'll be the first time that the two cricketing giants have faced off in India since their clash during the 2016 T20 World Cup in Kolkata. So how do players prepare for such big games in a World Cup or even a World Cup final? Well, to answer that question and a few more, we're joined on Stumped by Paddy Upton, recently an IPL coach with Delhi and Mumbai Indians. But Paddy is a trained sports psychologist and was the mental conditioning coach for India's men when they last won the World Cup in 2011 on home soil. Paddy, welcome to Stumped. How are you doing?
Yes, thanks very much. Good to be here, Alison. Nice to see you again. Sunil, Jim, nice to see you guys. Look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's great to have you on because you're actually fresh from the Asian Games where you helped the Indian men's hockey team win gold. So congratulations on that. How was that for an experience?
Oh, thanks very much. I mean, it was my first ever multi-sport or game situation like Olympic or Asian Games. So that was fascinating learning in itself. And it was really important that we won the gold because it meant a direct Olympic qualification and we were probably the favorites. So I would say winning gold was more of a relief than anything else because we had the team, we had the strategy, we had all the pieces, and it was really up to us to put it all together. And if we did that, we knew we were going to win. We could only lose it through our own hands. So it was good to win, but I'd say the overarching experience was one of relief because it was our plan.
Well, rewind back, if you will, then to 2011 and what your emotions were around that World Cup, because I mean, India winning on home soil was just enormous. And I've got memories of chatting to you around various hotel breakfast buffets when we were often in the same hotel during that tournament. But can you break down for us the role you played alongside, of course, Gary Kirsten, the coach?
Yeah, I remember distinctly playing the Asia Cup final 11 months before the World Cup final. And we were sitting in the morning of the final with Gary Kirsten, the bowling coach, Eric Simons. And the question was, if this was the World Cup final, are we ready to win? And the answer was no. So that really set the wheels in motion for the next 11 months to look at what were all the things we needed to do to prepare this Indian team to win, be the first team ever at that time to win on home soil in the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai, probably the loudest stadium in the world, in Sachin Tendulkar's last World Cup. And that was the only trophy he didn't have in his cabinet. So we knew it was going to be the highest mental pressure any of these players had ever prepared under. And we had 11 months to prepare for that, which, luck played its part, but we arrived ready to win. And the moment that Dhoni six-sailed into the stands to secure that World Cup victory, if I could bottle the experience I had in that sort of 3 to 5 minutes and just sell bits of it, I'd be the richest man in the world.
And Paddy, without betraying any confidences, I mean, of the names that you worked with in that 2011 World Cup winning team, the biggest who's no longer playing the game is Sachin Tendulkar, and probably the biggest who is still playing the game is Virat Kohli, who was more of a youngster back then. Can you give us an insight about what it was like to coach the two of them in 2011?
Well, to start off with, it was absolutely daunting. I remember arriving in the first couple of days and weeks in the Indian team, looking at Sachin batting, thinking, how on earth am I ever going to add value to the professor of cricket? And, his knowledge of his own game and his mind was incredible. But at the end of the day, Sachin is a little boy who loves batting. And he's just a good guy, and he's friendly, and he's open. And as a human being, he is just as normal as you and I. He just happens to have an incredible skill with the bat. So it was really easy to work with Sachin because he was open, he was inquisitive, he was interesting, he's just a good guy. And Virat was a different person. When I worked with Virat, he was the chubby little boy who was maybe cutting some corners and wasn't anywhere near the professional, dedicated athlete and warrior that he is today. So it was interesting to work with him then, and he didn't stand out as this incredible potential that he stepped into when he really stepped into being so professional, getting so fit, and in that he found this incredible, I would call it a warrior in him. And to work with him more recently, and I'm still in regular communications with him, he is at the front end of the professionalism curve, of the dedication, of ticking the boxes, of not leaving any stone unturned. Anyone who wants to do really well in whatever their profession is needs to look at what is everyone else doing. I need to be doing the best of that plus more. That puts you in the top 5%. And if you want to be in the top 1%, you've got to be even more dedicated, even smarter. And, I continue to learn from Virat in how he is just so incredibly professional. And, in talking to him in the lead up to this World Cup, I said very openly, and I'm not just saying it now after a couple of good innings, Virat is going to do well. He is so ready. His mind is so in the right space. He is going to give nightmares to opposition, and he's going to continue doing that. He's ready. He's on form. He's a warrior, and he's so far ahead of almost everyone else in the cricket world in terms of his mental, physical, emotional preparedness for this event. And if India gets to the final, Virat is going to be high chance he's going to be the guy who's going to go and fetch gold.
So what kind of work did you do with the players to get them to that state where they would be ready to handle that pressure?
Sure. To answer in a very short space of time, I guess probably the biggest piece was to have them mentally already having been there so many times. So by every single team meeting, every single practice for that 11 months, we would prefix it with something like, when we play the final in Mumbai, or when we play the final in the 2nd of April. It was never when we win it. It was always about getting to the final. So that by the time we got there and experienced that pressure that we knew was going to be the highest pressure they'd ever been under, we wanted the players mentally to have been there so many times before that it felt so familiar stepping out into that environment. And I even remember, I was preparing my any given Sunday speech. I knew I was going to be the guy's mental coach to give this amazing speech to prepare the players for a final. And we were so ready that my speech literally was, guys, this is like a Bollywood movie. We have all the actors. We know exactly what our roles are. All that's required is us to go out there tomorrow and do what we do, and we will cross the line.
With the India versus Pakistan game coming up, and Ali referred to it as one of the biggest games in the tournament, if not in the world, do you have to prepare differently? Do you have to prepare the team differently for something that's going to take place after 7 years in Indian soil?
That's India-Pakistan rivalry, both on the hockey field, that I've recently experienced, and on the cricket field. It's a massive rivalry. There's so much pressure. There's so much talk about it. The reality is so much of that rivalry and pressure and talk and excitement and energy actually is the fans and the media and people outside of the team. Inside of the team, the players actually are friends. They know each other. It's not just another game. And it's probably one of the easiest games as a mental coach that I've ever had to prepare for over the times that we played against Pakistan, because the players are so up for it. They're so ready. They don't need motivation. They don't need any bigger reason. If anything, what we need to do is just slightly decrease the noise that's coming from the outside and say, guys, let the fans and let the media get all hyped and all excited. For us, we know we just need to go out and we need to focus on playing our best cricket the way that we know how to play. And we're playing against guys in a green jersey.
In this World Cup, South Africa, Australia, and Pakistan themselves have got mental conditioning coaches. Does that even out the balance a bit? How do you think that they might be treating it? Because already the teams have played a couple of games, and some of them haven't really done too well. Though, of course, Pakistan pulled off a famous victory against Sri Lanka. So how do you think this is going to help them in this one big game coming up?
To really cut to the chase, it really depends on the role the mental coaches are playing in those teams. For me, the mental coach of teams is whoever the influence comes from within the team. So it's very often the coach, and sometimes coach captain, or with a very strong captain like an MS Dhoni. It would, for example, the leadership influence will come from the captain. And that's the person that influences players most. Specifically, the way they do that is they influence the environment or the culture in the team. The culture is the single biggest mental influencer. And if you've got, for example, a coach that shouts and screams and rants and criticizes players for making mistakes, that team will be riddled with players with fear of failure. And no mental coach coming in with, no matter how smart you are, you're putting a little plaster on a wound that the culture is causing, and the coach or the captain is driving that wound. So the best use of a mental coach really is to be working with a coach or this leadership, having them being very conscious of what language are you using, how are you behaving around success, how are you behaving around failure, how are you big upping the importance of winning and the importance of not losing, because that language and the way you behaving, particularly around failure, is what is conditioning the players. And so, for example, the hockey, yes, I know absolutely nothing about hockey. I've never hit a hockey ball with a hockey stick in my life, but I'm constantly talking to Craig Fulton, the coach, around how is he behaving when the team's under pressure? How is he behaving when we do badly? What's his language? How's he behaving when we're doing well? And that is influencing the team. And similar with the captain, Harmanpreet Singh, is how are you conducting yourself? Your energy is influencing the team. And that's 80% of the conditioning work done. The other 20% is maybe then when the player's in a great space, I can do a bit of work to fine tune their mind for those big moments, and maybe help them remove some off-field distractions, which is a very, very big thing in sport. But it takes a long time for a player to trust a mental conditioning coach to talk to him about the problems he's having with his girlfriend or his agent, or, whatever might be going on in the home space.
I think for the benefit of all our Stumped fans out there, and there are a couple of million, I think, around, I'd like to know a bit more about you and how you went from playing, coaching.
Jim, I started out my cricket career. I was one of those who've got 100 on first class debut. But to be honest, I was never going to make it, even though I had the talent. I didn't have the application. I didn't have the mental fortitude. I didn't have the dedication. So I was the guy who actually needed a mental coach because I was never going to convert my talent into results for any length of time. And I guess I was lucky in that I got offered the full-time position of fitness trainer. I was lucky, really, I hung up my career to go into full-time role as strength and conditioning. And for me, that wasn't enough. And, I just over the time with some gray hairs, and I transitioned to mental coach, transitioned to head coach and high performance director for some teams. So I've always been in and around the various roles in the high performance space. And I guess I'm telling and speaking to youngsters now about the kind of thing that ideally, I wanted someone to speak to me about, because mentally I was nowhere as a player.
Well, now on Stumped, we're joined by a record breaker who recently smashed a 29-ball century in the Marsh Cup. That's Australia's premier 50-over competition. It's the fastest 100 in all one-day cricket, the fastest in any professional game, eclipsing the record that was held by South African great AB de Villiers, a record that was 100 off 31 balls in an ODI in 2015. Now, what's more, this particular batter is only 21 years old. So welcome to Stumped, Jake Fraser-McGurk. Hi, Jake. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honour to be on Stumped.
Well, it's great to have you on. I mean, this was against Tasmania at the Karen Rolton Oval in Adelaide. I mean, just remind us, what were the match circumstances? How did this happen? Because you'd never scored 100 in any form of cricket until now, hadn't you?
Yeah, well, it was a pretty interesting game. Tasmania made 435 off their 50 overs. So, it made my job pretty clear of what to do at the start. It was a pretty flat wicket, and there was a short boundary to one side, but it was only longer by the other side by maybe 10 or 15 metres. So that was pretty much it, and just went out there and tried to hit the ball as hard as I could.
You must have absolutely been in a zone, as they would say. I mean, what about the actual record? When did you know that it had gone, that you'd got a record, and the fact it was AB de Villiers as well.
Yeah, well, I think during the game there was like the ground announcers and things like that. For my 50, they said it was the fastest in the Marsh Cup, is what we call it, our competition. So, and then I didn't really listen to anything when I was at 100 because I was too busy sort of like in the moment, my first 100 and things like that. But yeah, when I got out, my teammates said that I had a record, and I was wondering like, oh, what sort of record? And they're like fastest 100, and I was like, oh, in like the Marsh Cup. I thought it was just in the Marsh Cup, and they said no, it's like a world record. And yeah, I was a bit blown away and taken aback from hearing that.
Jim Maxwell in Sydney, Jake. You've created a lot of expectations since your debut as a 17-year-old, couple of half centuries, but it seems to have taken a little bit of time for you to come to the point where you can explode as you did the other day. Did you find those expectations a bit hard to handle up to this point of this extraordinary innings?
Yeah, Jim, it's been a bit difficult the last few years. When I was playing for Victoria, there was obviously, as you said, a lot of expectations and things like that after my debuts. But I think now, like that, I've moved to a new state and I've had a fresher sort of start, new faces, and got to sort of mature a bit as a cricketer and as a person. I've sort of learnt some new processes that I could put in place to help me succeed as a player on the field and be a better person off the field as well. So those sort of things have really helped me sort of develop my career to this point, and hopefully the success last weekend can continue throughout the whole season.
So name the cricketers that you look up to or looked up to when you were in Victoria and now in South Australia.
Yeah, Glenn Maxwell was a huge like player / friend that I look up to. We're pretty close now. And then when I was like a proper kid, sort of like 10 to 15, I loved Michael Clarke and Shane Watson and Aaron Finch, sort of those dynamic players that take the game on and move the game forward.
Hi, Jake. This is Sunil here in New Delhi. What are you hoping to achieve, let's say, in the next 2, 3, 4 years? What really goals have you set your sights on?
At the moment, I'm sort of just looking at this season and this season only, just trying to be the best player I can for South Australia, and hopefully we can win a lot of games. But it's always been, if we're talking long term, it's always been a dream of mine to play for Australia and in all three formats. That's the pinnacle, and that's where I see cricket is the highest. The highest you can get is playing for your country. So, yeah, that's always been a dream of mine ever since I was a 7-8-year-old young kid. So hopefully I can get there one day. But yeah, you got to work super hard for that, and you got to be super dedicated. So. Yeah, it takes a lot of hard work and to get there, and you can see the players now. There's a core group of members that have been there for over 10 years. So yeah, to be around that sort of mix a few times from sub-fielding and things like that, and just helping out with them has been wonderful experiences to see what it takes to get to that level.
As a 21-year-old, Jake, then it's interesting hearing you say you want to play all three formats. Sometimes you hear youngsters, look at the T20 game and the riches on offer in that and think, yeah, I really want to channel myself towards that. But is Test cricket also still, for you a real number one?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always wanted to play Test cricket for Australia. I think the baggy green is one of the most prized possessions in Australian sports, and a lot of people can see the money from these sort of big tournaments around the world. And sort of get carried away and forget the reason why they played cricket to start with. I know the reason why I played cricket to start with is because I watched Ricky Ponting and Michael Clarke and all those guys on my TV when I was younger, and I wanted to be them someday. So yeah, Test cricket is definitely the pinnacle and what I'd love to be doing, and that would be a dream.
We look forward to watching your journey. Jake, congratulations on the record, and thanks for sharing your story with us on Stumped as well.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me, and it's been a great time chatting to you guys.
Really enjoyed it. That is Jake Fraser-McGurk, who now holds the record for the fastest ever one-day 100. Well, that was all we've got time for on this week's Stumps. I'll say thanks to Jim Maxwell and to Sunil Gupta, and of course to all of you, and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.